Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Hey, we're coming here with another great podcast. We certainly appreciate you guys tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the show. Those of you who are seeing us live for the first time, we just picked up our LinkedIn Live this Saturday. And guess what? You can subscribe to the show. It's free for an unlimited time, so you want to race over there and take advantage of that deal while it's still available. Go over to youtube.com/Chris Voss or iTunes or The Chris Voss Show. There's a million places you can subscribe, and we're syndicated everywhere, including Amazon and Audible. So how about them apples? Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss. You can also go see us at all the different groups we have: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. There's just so many different places and groups that we have. They're just going to blow your mind at all the different content that's out there. Just search for Chris Voss, the Chris Voss Show. Today we have an amazing co-founder. She's on with us today for her company, Jubilant, and we're going to be talking about it. Her name is Archie Gottesman, and she is the authoritative voice on anti-Semitism. For more than 20 years, Archie and Stacy, her other co-founder, were the voice behind Manhattan's mini storage, New York City. Using politics, sex, pop culture, and plain old snark, they made Manhattan Mini Storage one of the New York City's most iconic brands. In addition to branding, Archie's business experience includes HR, business operations, and real estate. She has sat on the board of many Jewish organizations, including Foundation for Jewish Camp, Israeli Campus Coalition, and is the current chair of Zionist.org. Aside from saving the Jewish people from themselves or apathy, Archie cares deeply about ending the problem of overpopulation of homeless dogs. And she was the chair of the Animal Haven Shelter in New York City. Archie and her husband, Gary, live in New Jersey and are the proud parents of 3 daughters and 3+ shelter dogs. Welcome to the show, Archie. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here.
Awesome sauce. And you know what's funny is I love dogs too, so this touches my heart. I've had 4 huskies, and they're just dogs are good people. They're the best people, I think. I don't know.
Dogs, absolutely. They're definitely the best people.
So give us your plugs. Tell us where people can find out more about you and your company on the interwebs.
Jubilant.com. JEWBELONG.com. Go on Jubilant, sign up for our emails. We don't email you all the time. We are super sensitive about that. Lots of times Jews who are interested in Jubilant stuff, which we'll get into, they're like, I want to know about Judaism like 4-5 times a year. Like, don't tell me every time, it's Shabbat or something. So it's really, our emails are great. Also, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok most recently. But sign up for the emails and for Instagram for sure. This
is one of the things I love about my Jewish people. They don't show up and bang on your door at Saturday when you're hungover and, hit you up like the Mormons in the Seventh-day Adventists. They just like, we don't care if you want to join us, have fun with that. I love it.
Exactly. That's what we love to do.
Yeah, they don't bang on your door. So tell me about your background and what kind of your kind of upbringing, or what raised you or brought you to this moment of creating this company.
Okay, so I was brought up Jewish. I live in New Jersey. I had a conservative Jewish upbringing, which basically is the middle. Like, I always think of it as there's Reform, who's kind of the, oh my God, if Jews are hearing this, they're probably going to be like, that's not the way I would explain it. But it doesn't matter. I'm explaining it. I'm your guest today. So it's like, if Reform is the least and Orthodox is the most, conservatives in the middle, I was brought up conservative. And there's like many other details, but that doesn't really matter to now. And so I'm like going about my life. Judaism meant a lot to me. But I'm not like terribly observant. Like, it's not about like, belief in God or this or that. I find Judaism to be like really solid guideposts in life. And like, the way I kind of think about it is like, life is so complicated sometimes that when we belong to things like, you're an American, you're a man, like when you belong to communities, it sort of helps give like helpful guideposts sometimes. Otherwise you're like a leaf blowing in the wind. And Judaism was really helpful for that, for community, for family, things like that. So I'm living my life. And then I fall in love with this guy who ends up married him. I fell in love.
That's usually how it works.
All right. So I met Gary, And Gary is United Methodist. And we were starting to get serious. I was like, wow, this guy's like, he went to the Naval Academy. He was this like fabulous guy, right? And I was like, I'm Jewish, and if we're going to get serious, you're going to need to be Jewish too, because I'm going to have Jewish children. That was like my thing, right? Mm-hmm. And Gary's like, that's okay, I'll be Jewish. So, and it was a very not completely, but uneventful. He converted to Judaism, and his folks were fabulous about it. And so here I am, bringing this amazing guy into Judaism. And Jews are often like, they're really worried about their numbers, because like the Holocaust, and there were so many of us killed that like our numbers are shrinking all the time. And I'm like, guys, like I got a live one. I have this fabulous guy, and now he's like he's a new team member. And honestly, it wasn't like people were unwelcoming, but I felt like all of a sudden I'm looking at Judaism through Gary's eyes, because he's like a rookie to this whole thing. Uh-huh. I was like, this is not that, like, it's so much better than the way it advertises itself, is basically the branding is just the worst, but the product is great. That's how I kind of decided about Judaism. So, and by the way, it happens with so many things. Any other organized religion. I have a friend who's an Episcopal priest. She's like, oh, you Jews, you think you're the only ones with that problem? Like, we're the worst. I'm like, well, okay. Anyway, so I basically decided to have, like, I just kind of collected really resources like readings and things like that to sort of make our Jewish home, and just made decisions about how we wanted to live our life. We also joined a synagogue and things like that. We did the traditional stuff too. But anyway, so years later, after I left Manhattan Mini Storage, I did that for 20 years. I learned a lot about branding and business and all of that. I wasn't sure what I was doing, and I decided to make Jubalon, because it turns out that the problem that I was having and that Gary, had is so common. Like, everybody's got that problem in Judaism. And so that was, that's how we got to here. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's kind of crazy, just in that one of the things that Jubalon made up was this word called Jubarist. And Jubarist is when you feel like you don't know, like you're like not being a really good Jew, because like you don't know the rule. And I cannot tell you, so many people have said to me after that like word that we coined it, people were like, oh my God, I've been Jubarist my whole life. I just didn't know there was a word for it. I'm like, I know, isn't it amazing? And there's a rabbi once said to me, I think there's a lot of people in my congregation who are Jubarist. I'm like, oh dude, you have no idea. They're all Jubarist. Like, just assume that everyone doesn't quite get it, and help them out, and like just explain, just make the love come first and make the rules come second.
There you go.
In Judaism, and I don't know, in life if you can.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's how this.
So that inspired you to start this company. What is Jubalon? Tell us what it is, what it does.
Jubalon is an online resource platform. So there is no building, there's no, there's no dinners, it is resources. So it is Jubilant.com. You go on, let's just say you're like, okay, I heard this woman talk on the Chris Voss Show, and I've always thought about having Passover. I once did it when I was a kid, but I don't really know. I want to do Passover. So you go on Jubilant, you go over to the Passover section, you click on Passover, and then we tell you all about Passover, but not too much, because you don't want like 100 chapters. You want to know the basics. If you want to know a deep dive, there's plenty of other places. And then, and we tell it all in this, like, we've been there too. We're never gonna Jubarist you. And then there's a Haggadah, which is the guide for Passover. It's like the story that you tell on Passover, and you print it out, and it's all free. And so it's guides. And so some of them are guides, and sometimes it's just, this is really popular. Sometimes in the Jewish tradition, if someone dies, people sit Shiva. That's when you can go visit your friend's house if his dad died or something like that. And people are like, I'm going to do Shiva, but like, I want to make it more, I just want to make it more important, more touching. I want to add some meaning to it. So you go to the Shiva section, you click on Shiva, and we have beautiful readings. So it's really resources.
That's interesting. So I can use Jubalong to find out all the terms my friends use that I don't understand. Is that
100%. We have a little pop-up of all the words that, trust me, you think that your friends all understand those words. They don't. It's like no one understands. But yeah, we kind of come from it, and it's all done with a little bit of humor, a lot of heart. And so it's resources, it's education. And we also like to use the website for sharing other voices that we just think are really good out there. So that's what Jubalong is. And our social is a very similar, same idea. It's a lot of interesting, just additional, just stuff to make, God, life is just, it's so serious already. It's good to have some like meaning and add some spirituality to it.
So is it mostly for people who are new or coming to the Jewish faith and they want to understand it more? Or is it also for people who are currently Jewish and community for them?
It's both. It's that's a great question. It is so often people are like, okay, my boyfriend's Jewish and I'm going to, I don't know, a Shabbat dinner. I'm going to go to their house for Rosh Hashanah, which is New Year. I don't know what to expect. This was really great. I read your resources. I love it. So we get a lot of people who, a lot of people are in interfaith relationships in this world right now. And as, and you can either look at that and say, oh, that's terrible. Or you can look at it and say, that's great. I'm going to enlarge the tent and I want this person to feel really, really welcome in the, with Judaism. So we get a lot of people who, kind of similar to the Gary story before there was Jubilant. And then there's also a lot of people who grew up in Judaism and like, they feel like there's like a secret handshake and there is no secret handshake. And they're like, I'm a bad Jew. I never went to Hebrew school. My parents didn't do anything Jewish, but like I know I'm Jewish. We got a lot of people like that too, who are sort of in. And then there's people who are living really pretty active Jewish lives, but because Jubalong adds like, it's fun. I mean, we have like skits to do, and we have song parodies, and we have like readings that are so touching. So they may have done. They may have done all the holidays, but Jubilant adds a little bit of fun for them. So those are kind of the three, or those are the main people who are using it. And anybody else, sometimes people are just, I'm sorry. There's more. There's people who just get drawn to things. Mm-hmm. Like they're just like, there's like, I'm not Jewish. But I'm really interested in religions, and I found Jubalong and I love it. And a lot of people like that too. So it's a really broad audience.
Yeah. I mean, I'd use it to, check all the terms from my Jewish friends say stuff. And I'm like, what's going on over there? Like, I try and be supportive, and I'm like, yeah, happy, whatever you're doing over there.
Oh my God. I know I think you're kidding, but honestly, it like if you said this is really interesting to me and I looked it up and then I said to you, like, I actually read about that. And I was like, I learned that thing. Yeah. People love that stuff. Like, yeah. It's like, it's such a good friend thing to do, because it's like, you're spending time learning about something that means something to them. And it's like very touching.
Yeah, I've kind of learned all the stuff that they do, and it's always fun. My Jewish friends are some of my nicest people. Like I say, I think I like them the most because they don't bang on my door on Saturday mornings. But I mean, there's still time. You guys could do that if you want to do the whole missionary thing. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. My Mormon jokes. I grew up Mormon, so that's where those come from.
I think Mormonism is fascinating. I really do. But anyway.
Well, I'll leave that.
Okay. We don't have to go to that one now. But I know I was like, I think I'm interested in this kind of stuff.
I'm glad you are.
Beliefs and stuff are interesting. Okay. No more talk.
No, that's fine. I was just being funny. So it looks like a really interesting website. I've looked on it, and you can see all the different terminologies and stuff like that. Now you also do some things. There's a link on your website that highlights about real anti-Semitism. On the community. Tell us about that, and what are you trying to accomplish there?
Okay, so here's what happened. So Jubalong's like just doing our Jubalong thing, as I just explained to you, and then recently the uptick in anti-Semitism in the world but I'm focusing mostly on the US, has just grown. And it's awful. And people should be like screaming about it. And Stacy, who's my Jubilant co-founder, and I were like, wait a second, we've got this platform. We're speaking about it. Everyone should be talking about anti-Semitism all the time because it's awful and you have to sort of like not ignore it. And it kind of interesting. So we decided to do that. What's interesting to me is that not all Jewish groups are doing that, which is like, it's their prerogative, but we really could not ignore it. It's like when things are important, good or bad, I think shoving them under, just like, let's just pretend that's not happening and let's just ignore it, I think is a really, really bad way to go. I think it allows hate to grow and makes people kind of like emboldened in terrible stuff. So we decided to go full on and talk about anti-Semitism. And it's great because it's important. It's really difficult because there's a ton of hate out there. And I don't know. I don't know why I'm surprised, but I'm a little surprised at how much anti-Semitism there is out there.
I think, I was surprised too. I remember, the last 5 years I've watched the Southern Poverty Law Center's Hate Watch, evolve and track I fell off my chair when those Charleston racists showed up and where the Jews will not replace us. I just was like, what's going on? I thought we were in the evolve world now. What the hell is going on? And I think a lot of us were really shocked at the hate that started to really evolve the last few years, and is still going along. And I think wasn't it? I think one of the gals, Green, said some stuff that she's had to retract too. I mean, anti-Semitism and hate is a real big problem. And we see with the rise of fascism every time it kind of comes around. We've had a lot of authors on the show that have talked about it. So I think it's great that you guys are highlighting it, calling it out, and people are focusing on it so that it can be put back to bed or put to rest. I wish we get over all this hate so we just didn't have it anymore. It's just so unproductive and such a horrible way to run humanity. But it seems like we never learn our lessons too much. So it's good to always keep bringing us back.
Yeah. And I would love to not. Like, that's also a little surprising to me, what you were saying about it being in Charleston and everything. Like, I did think that it was, I think there was a certain time that up to relatively recently where there was definitely anti-Semitism and hate of all groups, but it just wasn't quite there. And now it's just like, it's just really popular and it's awful and it is surprising to people. And I totally agree with you. I don't get, that like basic, like, I haven't even met you, but I hate you. And then you got to like, how do you get over that with people? Like, how can you just sort of like, how do you move ahead? If I already hate you, well, we haven't really started yet. You never even met me. And it's like, but it's really common. We ask people for stories. And oh my God, the story, like we just said, if, send us anti-Semitic stories that have happened to you. And oh my God, it's on the website. It's called You Killed Jesus, Horns and Pennies, because like we literally broke it up into themes. And the people who email and's like, oh yeah, I was, or not email, this is mostly on Instagram. The people who we have it documented, like there's pages and pages of this stuff. It's crazy reading. But yeah, like there's so many stories like, oh yeah, I was in third grade and someone told me I killed Jesus and like I didn't know who Jesus was and like how did I kill, like, and like, but there's not one of those stories. There's like 100 of those stories. And like I was walking along and people threw pennies at me and I didn't know why. And they said, because Jews are the only people who pick up pennies. And like that, like someone, oh yeah, it's just
I
so
never even heard that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because it's like you cheap Jew and like you Jew people down and and then people are like, well, I didn't even know what that meant. And that means like you're trying to get a better price because you're Jewish. And like, it's just gross. And then there's like these, apparently Jews are supposed to have horns and there's so many stories where people were like, I was like a kid and like a teacher like looked in my hair to see if I had horns because she wanted to see where the horns was. So it's like, oh my God, this is so freaking stupid. But this is like what's interesting about these stories. And again, you can go on Jubilant.com. It's actually under the anti-Semitism section. And what's really interesting and I think a little helpful is that when there's a space to say, like a lot of people who wrote them said, like, I haven't told anyone this story. I haven't thought about this story in years, or I never told anybody. Mm-hmm. And like, thanks for asking. And just in that one, like, I don't know if I want to believe in world peace. I really do, but boy, we have a long way to go. But like, if we can just make the world a little better. And even in that one moment of like, you know, asking someone to tell us something that made them vulnerable, it just helps a little bit. Like I know you talk about like know what people's, you know where people stand, and it's just I don't know, just like asking them like, tell me about a story that was really hurtful for you, and it doesn't dissipate it forever, but it does help. So there was a lot of pain that came out in those stories, and a lot of interesting things, and mostly a lot of motivation to know that this is really important work, and that even though Jubilant, it's a bit of a pivot for us, it's important that we talk about it, and that we ask people questions, and that we, you know, and I've got ideas to go for these things, and I want to know about hate from other groups, and maybe if I know a Catholic priest, and I was talking to him about this, and he said that a rabbi had once told him, he said, one guy said to the other, I love you. And he said, no, you can't love me until you know my suffering. Sorry, this is like one man, not telling the story that well, but one guy said to another guy, oh, you know, it's two Jewish guys, Moshe, I love you. And Moshe said back to Shlomo, you cannot know me unless you know my suffering. And now, again, this was a Catholic priest who was telling me this story, but there's really something in that where we all really need to understand, like what hurts us, like what are we made of, like where can we be vulnerable, and then we can sort of like mend and just kind of you know, really love each other.
Yeah. And having that community where you can heal each other, share experiences. You know, one thing I've always loved about social media or sharing experiences when it's honest and when it's when people are authentic is you realize you're not alone in some of the insults or some of the attacks that you've taken. You realize that other people have felt the same way, and thereby you build a community supporting each other, and people don't feel so alone anymore, and can get empowered from it. Tell us about the Billboard out of home and digital campaign you guys are doing, and how does that work?
Okay, so we have billboards. So I said I wanted to talk about anti-Semitism, and what Stacy and I did before Jubilant. We were also worked together before we started Jubilant. Is we worked at a storage company, and we became known for our billboards and the way we our language and catchy lines. So we bought billboards they went up in Times Square 2 days ago. They just started, and I'm going to tell you a few of them. Is that okay?
Yeah, please do. Please
Great.
do.
One of them says, I promise to love being Jewish 10 times more than anyone hates me for it. One of them says, we're just 75 years since the gas chambers. So no, a billboard calling out anti-Semitism isn't an overreaction. One of them says, chocolate hummus on a onion bagel isn't the hate crime we're currently worried about. One of them says there's a couple more, being woke and anti-Semitic is like being a vegan who eats veal. And another one says, you didn't like it when we didn't defend ourselves, and you don't like it when we do. That doesn't give us much wiggle room. And the last one says, here's an idea. Let's ask everyone who's wondering if anti-Semitism is real to wear a yarmulke for a week and then report back. And the yarmulke is the skull covering.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, and one more, sorry, that says 35 years of anti-Semitism doesn't make it right. So those are like freaky, like in your face kind of things. Like we're 75 years, from the gas chamber. Like, no, it's not an overreaction. Call this out. This is inexcusable behavior that is going on in the country. And we want to talk about it. And that's why we put up the billboards. And it's not just billboards, but then they're being, because they're provocative, people, and because it's not really being shouted from the rooftops, people are taking, they're reposting them and talking about it and just getting it part of the conversation, like this, like the fact I'm talking to you. Like, I'm so happy to be here because, like, someone might be listening and be like, oh my God, this is interesting. They're talking. I thought there was a lot of anti-Semitism. I thought it was going up. I hadn't really heard the news talk about it. It doesn't get much coverage, but like, yeah, it was like, let's talk about this. It's there.
Yeah. I mean, if I just had the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate watch up, looking at the map, and you can see the map of all the hate groups, and hopefully they're on the run at least a little bit now than they used to be. For a while, they felt really emboldened. I think people still feel emboldened. It just shocks me that people are still fooled by millions or hundreds of thousands of years that humankind has been in business of being humankind. Is that how you say it? But anyway, there's always been politicians that go, the immigrant over there, that person over there, they're the bad person, the straw man thing that they do. And they're the ones stealing from you. Meanwhile, the politicians stealing from everyone as they turn to look at whoever they're pointing at. And it's really sad to me that people still don't get this. But it's like the saying I always say on the show, the one thing man can learn from his history is that man never learns from his history.
Oh my God, that's so.
Thereby, we just keep going around and around circles.
It's awful, and I think that's. I totally agree with you. It is shocking. I mean, you should see the hate that Jubilant gets.
Wow.
Oh my God, we get like, Hitler should have finished you off. That's not even like.
Wow, that's not even cool.
Not even cool, but it's like that's nothing. Like, we get that all the time, and it's like. Yeah, it's funny because sometimes I love doing this because I really believe in. Well, I really believe in it, but it's also like there's got to be this almost way where you not divorce myself, but I have to compartmentalize because it's like I don't know you. Like, why would you want Hitler to kill me? Like, like that's the trouble. People don't, hate's a very what you said before. Hate's like it's just there. It's hard to figure out why it's there, but it is. And I think try to fight against it.
I think what you guys are doing is good because it's educating. A lot of hate comes from ignorance, and probably some loss of empathy or some teaching of loss of empathy, where we don't look at people as like, this is another human being in front of me. We put labels on people because it's the lazy thing to do or the cheap way, or, we don't have to spend time, like you mentioned earlier, educating ourselves as to getting to know people in that rabbi situation or the analogy that you gave. And so what you guys are doing is helping educate people, get people out there, let people know. My Jewish friends have educated me on Judaism and how they do. And, I always see them on Facebook, whatever holidays or stuff they're cooking. And of course, I'm always interested in food. But so when I see stuff, I go, so maybe I'll become Jewish. That looks really good right now. Except for that Javelta fish. We talked about it's the one thing that's keeping me away at this point. I've seen that in the jar. Anyway, I'm just joking. So why do you not think your movement is covered more in mainstream media and other places?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. Because I don't think Jews like talking about anti-Semitism, and I have a friend and she's like, oh, there's Jewish journalists. I'm like, I don't know if the Jewish journalists have not been jumping at this subject. I don't want to say nobody, but it's not like there's a big, like, why haven't they been covering it? Maybe they're scared. I think fear is a huge motivator. I think that speaking out about anti-Semitism gets you a ton of hate, as I just said. And if like no one's doing it and you don't do it too, then you're just like, you're scared. And So I think they're scared. I think they, I don't know. I think there's some people who are like demeaning, like trying to like make it smaller than it really is, and which is really a big mistake. So like there's a lot of it going on college campuses and stuff, and like I don't know. I get really scared, honestly. I'm like, as soon as someone's killed because of antisemitism, and it's going to happen. I mean, I hate to say that, but like I feel like it is. Like there's been close things. Oh, there have been people killed. What am I talking about at the synagogue? I was just talking about like a fight or something like that.
Like Philadelphia.
No, there have been. But like, I was talking more like on a college campus. Like there's all these fights sometimes. And sooner or later, one of those fights is going to turn into, but why? I don't know. They talk about it for 5 minutes. And then, as soon as and then they go on to the next thing. And it's a little bit, but like, they are just, Jews are funny. I remember I told you about that, the Jews, horns and pennies. One of my favorite, not favorite, but like really is real was a story. I'm going to just read it. Till 2 sentences. Here's one that basically here's the story. When I was a kid, there's a boy who was writing this. When I was in elementary school, a kid pushed me down into the urinal during a bathroom break. My friend turned to the kid and said, "Why'd you do that?" And the kid who pushed me down into the urinal responded, "Because Jews don't fight back." And like, out of all the stories, like as I said, we got hundreds. That one kind of like sticks with me a lot because Jews, God, I can just imagine the hate I'm going to get from saying this, but like, they're not real. Like I am Jewish. I am a proud Jew. Like we're not necessarily speaking up for ourselves in this one way. Jews are really good at like speaking up for other people. Like, oh, let me talk about that impoverished group. And let me talk about like, you name a cause. And the Jews I know, they're like all about those causes. And there's something called Tikkun Olam, which is repairing the world. And Jews are like, yeah, we're going to repair the world, which is great. It's like a nice value. But there is something about sort of standing up and saying, no, like you can't treat me like that. And which is not, it's not necessarily it's not like the first reaction. So like our muscles are sort of atrophied for that. So I think that there's that. I don't think Jews are necessarily fighters in terms of like, no, you can't, like that's hate and cut it out. And I hope it does get covered. I mean, obviously I hope it gets covered more. But you know what Jubilant's doing? Jubilant's like, listen, we're going to get covered by the right, like good people like yourself. And we're going to keep doing this because it's the right thing to do. And sometimes it's not easy. And sometimes it's, it's harder to, like those billboards are expensive and we have to raise the money to put the billboards up. And that's a pain in the ass. But like, sometimes you just do the right thing because that's like, I don't know. I'd hate to, I really hate to see if this is so dark, but like, I think about the Holocaust sometimes. Like, I don't know what people were doing when the Holocaust happened, but like, I don't want to, ever look back one day and say, wow, that was like, in 2030 or whatever it is, like in 10 years from now, it was even worse and not have done everything I could to stop it. And like, and this is what I know how to do. And this is what Stacy and I do together. And that's it. Like, we're just going to keep doing this. And we hope we get more help. And, but if we don't, we're not going to stop. I think that's important. Social in any sort of justice kind of, or movements, like important things.
Yeah. And I think everybody doesn't want to have to sit and live their lives defending themselves all the time. Everybody wants to go, do their thing. I mean, you don't want to always constantly have to be on defense and stuff, but still though, education is really important. It helps fix ignorance. A lot of people watch my show and they write me afterwards and they go, this happened with a lot of things with Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd stuff. A lot of people wrote me and they go, I really like the way you listen and approach different subjects on the show. And it taught me that instead of going to the tropes or assumptions that I have, to maybe open up and listen more and learn more and go, well, maybe I should learn more about what this means and what that means and who a certain group of people are and how we're all just human when it comes down to it. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm.
No, I totally agree with you. Like, it's interesting because Black Lives Matter, like, I think Black Lives Matter is really a fascinating group. I know that sometimes they've been tagged at being anti-Semitic, but I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about the idea of a group standing up and saying like Black Lives Matter and the good and like wanting to speak their pain and educate in and I think that that's pretty amazing that they sort of changed the way that, they sort of changed the discussion of race in America. I think the same way about Stop Asian Hate. I think that was also really interesting. It's like, yeah, like I would be I want to be the person who's proud to stand up, first of all, against hate and also for my people. And that's basically what Jubilant is doing. It's a similar thing. It's like standing up and to say no more hate. Like those are, I think I do think the internet and I think the way that our world is now allows for, discussions like that. And I want it to be positive. Like it's not a zero-sum game. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't need to hate you to like no one has to win. Everyone can just be like, yeah, we can just, God, it sounds so corny, but just get along. It's just so freaking, it's crazy that it's not, that it's just so hard.
It really is so true. And with the dissolving of the middle class, people are just trying to get by and they don't have enough money and they try and blame the other person, the straw man, whoever is being put up. And yeah, I mean, over the last 5 years, you've seen Jewish tombstones being knocked over in Jewish cemeteries across America. The hate just exploded on the market and was really given a license by politicians to let it all out. And we're not, with the rise of fascism, that's usually what it predicates is the going after people of minority communities and they've gotten too much power. And so the hierarchy kind of comes in and goes, or I'm trying to think of the word, comes in and goes, no, we're taking the power back. And, we're not that far from hateful and ugly things being done when you've seen, the synagogue shootings. The Uyghurs are currently going through camps. It's 2022. We don't seem to have learned anything in 70 years. And so it's really important that the cyclical nature of us not learning and moving back into hate and in and out of hate over, since 1940, in the 1940s, it's something we have to be active on and constantly defend and be proactive against. Yeah, no, it is 100% that. And it is funny with anti-Semitism, Jewish hate, because sometimes I think like there's so few Jews in the world, like we're 0.02% of the world and like 2% of America. And it's like, we're not even a rounding error in the numbers of us, but we get so much hate and like so much attention. Like it's crazy. There's hardly any, like it's really, really small. And that's another thing about, any hate, but anti-Semitism specifically, it's like, man, you don't even like know any Jewish people and you hate us. Like, how is that? It's kind of funny, but that's hate. Like, it doesn't have to be, based on anything logical. Like, yeah, I mean, that's usually the biggest problem. Like I said, the ignorance. I mean, you don't know somebody, you don't know whatever. You see them as the other, quote unquote, the other, then you hate them. And a rising tide lifts all boats. I mean, that's one thing we need to get as a humanity, as a community, as countries. The rising tide lifts all boats. If we raise all voices, if we celebrate everyone, if we love everybody, and I sound like John Lennon's song Imagine, which is my favorite song, but if we love everybody, then we all rise. And it's sad that we have politicians and other people in the world that use these messages to manipulate people and control people and go, hey, that other person's stealing from you. Well, some of these politicians pick our pockets, and they get power from separating and dividing us. So what's next for Jubilant? What are you guys up to for the site? What's the future hold in what you guys are trying to accomplish? So if we finish killing anti-Semitism, that'll be it's tricky because we're going to keep going. This is not a one and done because the stakes are too high. Because, when I was thinking about when we were talking about shifting from, as explained earlier, Judaism and rebranding Judaism, and we didn't change that, but we kind of pivoted a little into anti-Semitism.
it was the thing to do. And now obviously we're doing both because they're both really important. But one of the other, the reason that it's extra important is because this is going to sound like this is my business person coming out, but it's market share. Because like, let's just say you're a Jewish person and you're a Jubilant person. So you don't care that much about being Jewish. Like you had hardly any Jewish education, but like, your parents are Jewish, but they didn't really do much, but your grandparents did a little more. That's like a typical American story. My grandparents were very Jewish. My parents were hardly Jewish. I'm not, I'm Jewish-ish. And then like, but all I get is hate. And like, if I don't even barely care about it and now you're going to hate me for it. Like, I don't need this crap. Like I barely wanted to come in the first place. So we're going to like lose Jewish population simply because of this weird this hate that's sort of arising. So it's almost like it's like saving the organization of Jubilant by helping to really come down hard on the anti-Semitism and speak. It's not going to end it, but it will help to, to dissipate some of it. And we're going to keep going. There's probably going to be another campaign, and all of the campaign that I read is on the website. And and ask people. And we take a lot of our cues from our audience too. So we take all of our feedback really seriously. People tell us what they need, and and we talk about that. We really talk about. People have a lot of, they sometimes say, well, I like Israel and I'm Jewish and like, and we're like, we that's a lot on the site too. We have, of course you can like Israel and be Jewish and not be a hater. And like, that's craziness to like, don't get eaten up by the hate. And you can disagree with Israel's government. That's okay too. Like, guess what? No one's perfect, but it is fine for that. So we do, as I say, take our cues from our audience, and it's great. We love, they're interesting. That's for sure. From the positive, we're not going to go into the hate stuff, but we want to give people what they want.
Well, it's good that you guys create community. I love community. I build lots of communities across different platforms, and it's interesting how much it helps other people. Because the worst thing in life is feeling you're alone, and that your experience of humanity, being human, is unique, and you're going through trials and tribulations, and you think that you're the only one. Like someone's put one of those mirrors on you or the glasses for the ant farm, and they're just frying, and you're just like, why is everything coming down on me? And so community is really good because people can combine together, they can learn, they can educate. And I think this is great too, because there's a lot of times where my friends will say, yeah, we're celebrating this, and I'll be like, what's going on over there? I support them and all that good stuff. And so if you understand what your friends are doing and what they're up to, then you can understand that better too. And I think the outreach is awesome.
Yeah. And tell them to invite you. I tell my friends when I'm like, okay, I keep inviting you. I've invited you to Passover. Invite me to Easter. Invite me to anything. Invite me to Ramadan. Invite me to anything you're doing, because how am I going to, first of all, I'm interested. Second of all, I like learning about different cultures and religions. Third of all, you're my friend. You should invite me anyway. I don't know. Fourth of all, there's probably good food and like glass of wine. Like, I love the idea of people inviting each other into their cultures and then not worrying about and like not get like weirded out if they don't know what's going on. Like, say, this is how this is what we do, and you take off your shoes before you come in, or I don't know, whatever. Like, there's so many fabulous, beautiful cultures out there, and I think the more people like share them, they don't have to give a class every time they invite someone to a different kind of dinner, but just enjoy it. Like, come and see how my great grandparents lived. Come and see what was transferred down in my family. Come and eat the kind of food that we have. Like, I think that is, oh God, that builds bridges more than, as you said, more than the politicians, more than, so much is just come to my house and see how we do it. And then I want you to invite me to yours. And that's what Jubilant is all about. That we are constantly telling people to invite people. Like, that's it's more fun anyway to live that way. So yeah.
You give me a good idea. I need to go guilt my Jewish friends that they haven't invited me to their
That's really, I'm a little mad at them for you. I don't know. It's like something.
Maybe that was the reason they didn't invite me. They're like, he's fat. He'll eat it all.
No, it's like, no, I know why they didn't, because sometimes people are funny. They're like, well, this is our thing, and maybe he will feel uncomfortable, and then we'd have to explain it. No, that's crazy. You invite people, and I have done, I mean, this is not from like me not trying. I have done this so many times. And at the beginning, when I would invite people to Shabbat, I often have Shabbat dinners, and I used to feel like, oh no, are they going to like it? Is it too Jewish? Is it too, oh no, you're going to do a prayer in Hebrew. That's going to be awkward. And then I got over myself. Like, that was my hang up. Like, people weren't, they're in my, like, they just wanted to come. Like, it was fine. There was rarely, I don't think ever a time where it was what I was nervous about, that like, is this going to be okay? Turned into, the fear was always, it was always just in my head, and it's always nice. And, I think with the heart, in most people's hearts, they're good. People are good. They just want to,
Yeah. So to all my Jewish friends out there, if you ever want to invite me over for dinner, as long as it's not gefilte fish night, I'm coming. But other than that,
you come to my house, Chris.
I have to do the gefilte fish jokes. I always tease my Jewish friends about them. I'm like, serious, have you seen what's in there? And they're like, Chris, it's just, hey. Okay,
I don't want to embarrass you, but it's gefilte fish.
Gefilte?
Yeah, gefilte. Okay. I'm sorry, I should have said it earlier, and then I was like, it's his show. I don't know. I should correct him.
I'm a stupid Gentile, so
no. Oh my God, no. Gefilte fish. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you didn't say gefilte fish right, and they've been confused.
That's right. I don't know. It seems like something I shouldn't even bother saying right. I've seen. I don't know. I just look at every now and then. I'm one of those people that I love different cultures and everything. I mean, to me, I'm a lot like who was the gentleman who used to go around and eat food and break bread with people.
The one who killed himself, Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah, Anthony Bourdain. And so I'm a lot like that. You get to know people in their culture through food. And it might be just because I'm really fat and I like eating, but that's how I feel about it. But so I'll go down the aisles and I'll like, my Jewish friends, they'll post stuff like matzo ball soup and stuff like that. And I'm like, that looks really interesting. And so a lot of times I'll go down the Jewish section of the store and I'll be like, oh, what do they got over here? They got some interesting seasoning, and then I'll see that whatever it is.
Gefilte fish. It's just a hard G. Gefilte fish.
Yeah, and I want to throw it all on the ground because I'm just.
Oh my God, you are obsessed. I do. I
looked at it really closely one day, and I was like, I don't know what that is. some of my Jewish friends told me about it, but clearly I'm losing the audience that loves the fish. So my bad.
I don't know if that's such a big market share.
That's what I've heard. Some of my Jewish friends have told me.
Yeah, actually, you know what? It's funny. I loved Anthony Bourdain too. He gave that. You're exactly right. What he did is he broke barriers by eating food and talking about it and learning about culture. And I think in a way gave me an idea, like that's what, Jubilant is about. Yeah. And that's kind of like what everybody should be doing. It doesn't have to be on TV. It just has to, be shared.
What I'd have fun doing is if you guys put on like a big, come break bread with us thing, because somebody explained this to me one time a long time ago. There used to be this thing where people, they had their own yeast for their bread and they would make bread. And, that was a staple of the early times of humanity. And the way that you would get to know people, meet them or stay with them, visit with them, learn about them, is you would break bread together. And so people would take their yeast, make bread and share it. And you would exchange food, and that's how you learn people's culture. And so I've always really liked that breaking bread concept. And as you can tell, I've broken quite a bit of bread.
They literally would break the bread. They bake it.
Well, yeah, you cook the bread and then you break it and share it. And,
cool.
It's like slicing the bread basically. And so I love the concept of it. My friend, he's like, yeah, I have my own yeast now, my yeast culture, and he grows it and he goes, I make bread and then I give it to people. And this is my way of breaking bread with them. But that's the way we used to, in the olden days of old, I guess, we'd break bread with people. So I'd love to go to like some Jewish dinners and stuff. I'm getting hungry talking about it. And checking it out. Except for that
Except for the gefilte
Except
fish.
gefilte fish.
Say it with me. Gefilte fish.
Gefilte fish. Not
Got
going
it.
down that aisle. Not even going to try it. I'm sorry. There's some things you just look at and you're like, no, I don't. That doesn't need to go on the bucket list. But I'll try matzo ball soup. And I've never had matzo ball soup.
Never had matzo ball soup?
I like to try it. So it looks
dude,
good.
you're coming. Okay, you're first. Okay, you're coming to Passover. There's a lot of matzo ball soup. Yeah, it's good. I think that it's all the idea of breaking bread is beautiful. It sort of gives and it just gives an added, just an added dimension to the culture. And then it's also really nice. We have the best. Sorry, I just throw this in there because now you're making me hungry about Shabbat dinners. But at Jubilant Shabbat dinners, it's interesting because what we try to do is we say, like, it's great to have the food and it's delicious and all of that, but we also try to, like, we add these questions that we go around with on Shabbat dinner, and like they're really, you would love them. They're like these pro questions. Like one of them is like, what is there any value that I would be willing to die for? Which is a little dark, but it brings really interesting conversation. And the way it is, it's like, it's literally part of the Jubilant Shabbats. And we do the same thing on Rosh Hashanah, which is the New Year. And people talk about like, what kind of person do I want to be this year? And if there's a task that I've left undone, like what task this coming year, because we're talking about the new year, if left undone, would I be most disappointed if I don't do it? And there's like 12 different questions. They're all on the Jubilant website, and both the Shabbat and the other for the holidays. And like, I think the only thing better than sharing a meal with friends is sharing a meal with friends and having great conversation, and like conversation where people kind of show their hearts. And that's what the Jubilant, Shabbats and all the meals are like that, because we literally give you instructions on how to have a more meaningful meal. It's not just like serve the food and everybody eat. It's serve the food and now prompt and it's not a lot of work. It's super easy. It's like just a couple prompts for conversation. And then, oh my God, the best conversations I've ever had have been around Shabbat dinners, because people just like, who asks you that? Nobody asks you that like on a day-to-day basis. Like, are there any values you've been willing to die for? But like, it's not a bad thing to think about. It's kind of cool. And like, what kind of, like all those things. What do you want written on your tombstone? That's another one.
Mm-hmm. It sure beats what I see people now when they're out at restaurants. So the whole family, each one of them is just looking at their phone, not even talking to each other. Yeah. It's really bad community.
It's and it's literally give you people put their, I don't even make people. It's not like I'm like, a hard ass about it, but people put their phones away and they really take it. They take it to heart, and it's not that it's all serious. Some of it's really fun, but people really, they take the time to answer the questions and to really learn a little bit more. And that's why that's why I like ritual. That's what Jubilant's about, is ritual, because day to day we can go through our lives and we forget to kind of ask ourselves the big question. I feel like you do that you sort of live a purposeful life, but like, I think not everybody does. And Jubilant is like, reminds people like, live with purpose, live with meaning, find the meaning in things, make it here, make the meaning if you want to, or so it helps with that too. And
there you go. Well, Archie, it's been wonderful to have you on the show. Anything you want to plug about the site and stuff and what you guys are doing before we go out? Just really, I'm just going to tell again in case people didn't write it down or sign up for those emails, jubalon.com. And our Instagram is at Jubilant, and same with Facebook. It's a small organization. There's 4 of us. And if people want to, when I say that, like, we really do take seriously what people say, I mean it. And if people have, like, they want to say something, it's hello@Jubilant. You can find it by going there. It's also, we're a nonprofit. We're a 501c3. We raise money for the billboards and for everything. And if people are so moved by saying this is really fabulous and I used it and I love it, it's, we're a nonprofit. We do this because we love it and people care. And, and that support is fantastic.
So, but thank you for letting me say that. That's also really important about it. And and just use it and tell their friends.
Tell your friends.
Jews and non-Jews. Just
pass it around. That's the more we can cancel hate and stop hate and get everybody to learn about each other. That's half the fun of life, is collecting stories and learning about other people, cultures, how they do. That's one thing that I always enjoy, and probably why I love my show is I'm curious about it. Other people, I'm innately curious. I'm like, what motivates people? Why did you do this? Why did you? We all kind of walk through this giant forest of life, and there's all these paths that split into different ways, and you go down them, and in the road that you go down, if you turn left, is different than when you turn right. And that's half the adventure, is finding out all these different things. And the beauty of life is the different, it's the different seasons, it's the different colors, it's the different, it's everything's different, and when people walk through life with this thing that everybody must be like me is just ignorant. So stupid. Yeah.
No, you really, like, I hope this doesn't sound too corny. You were sort of living this very sort of Jubilant way of asking questions and finding out what makes people tick. And not everyone can do what you do all the time, but it gives them the chance to do it a little bit, and it gives them the guideposts to do that. And and it does make things a little bit better. And you're coming to Shabbat dinner, and you're eating fish.
All right. Well, I might taste a little bit, but I might have to put some wine in me first.
Totally fine. We always like wine.
I'll hold my nose like this, but I don't know. My Jewish friends have told me, they're like, yeah, it's not that great either. So they've been pretty honest with you about the whole thing. Anyway, thank you very much, Archie, for coming on the show. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Give us your plugs too before we go out.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me. Jubalon.com, @Jubalon, and those are them. Please visit the site, sign up for our emails, sign up for our Instagram, and tell your friends all about it. Jubalon, JEWBELONG.com.
There you go, guys. And stomp out hate everywhere you see it. Get people to quit being hateful to each other. If you find yourself struggling with it, learn more about other people. It's simple about just getting to know people and why they do things, and realize the world is a giant smorgasbord, it's a giant buffet of just so many different flavors and tastes and just everything. And that's the beauty of life, collecting all of that information, and it expands your mind, expands your life. So embrace that. Don't be some hateful guy in his little hole somewhere underneath the bridge being a troll. To my audience,
stop hating, right?
Stop hating. Stop hating.
Stop anti-Semitism. Stop all hate. Right.
Everyone's a human being. We're all built with the same sort of DNA, so quit hating each other. Go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, see the video version of this. Go to all of our groups on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the different places that the Chris Voss and Chris Voss Show brands are. You can also go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss and see what we're reading and reviewing over there. Thanks, Manis, for tuning in. Be sure to be good to each other, and we'll see you guys next time.